Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're tackling a pretty intense topic, I'd say. We're going to be jumping into the world of Randy Gage and his book, Why You're Dumb, Sick, and Broke. We're using excerpts from the audiobook, and the goal here is to try to boil down what exactly he's arguing and also try to figure out how we can apply this to our own lives.
Yeah, you picked a really bold author for sure.
Yeah, definitely bold. Yeah, so I've listened to a good bit of it, and I'm curious what your take on it is so far. I think it's thought-provoking for sure. Some of his claims I'm a little skeptical of, but I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah, he doesn't really pull any punches, does he?
No, not at all. Straight to the point.
Yeah, and his central thesis, it seems like, is that most people are trapped in cycles of negativity, right? And poor health and financial struggles. And it all boils down to what he calls subconscious programming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And he uses this really striking analogy. It's the mimetic viruses, and that's the part that really kind of caught my eye. It's this idea that our minds, they get infected with these like limiting beliefs, kind of like kind of like catching a cold, but for your mental outlook on wealth and success.
It's a good analogy for sure.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of like that. It's insidious. It's like these subtle things.
Exactly. And these viruses, they're incredibly subtle, but also really powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just think about some of the common phrases that we hear all the time, like money doesn't grow on trees or rich people are greedy, those sayings.
Right.
They seem pretty harmless on the surface, but they can really plant the seeds of a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, wow. I never thought about it that way before.
Have you ever noticed how often you hear those?
No, but I'm sure now that you've planted that in my head, I'll start to notice it everywhere.
Exactly. And we're just absorbing them, like from our environment,
Yeah, unconsciously.
Yeah. And he argues that these viruses, they come from different sources.
Right. Right.
Like, starting with like family and social circles, right? Maybe our families and friends, they might unintentionally pass down, these limiting beliefs about money and success. Or even about what we deserve.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like inheriting a financial blueprint, but not always a positive one, yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Then he talks about organized religion. And I know that this is kind of sensitive, but he's suggesting that certain interpretations of religious teachings, might foster this sense of unworthiness.
Right, yeah.
Or even like a fear-based consciousness that can hold people back from personal growth.
Yeah, to be fair to him, he's not advocating against religion itself, but I think he's encouraging us to be mindful about how any messaging, even if it's well-intentioned, how that might be shaping our beliefs about wealth.
Sure.
It's just about questioning those assumptions.
Right, right. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is the media and the digital world, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to avoid it.
Think about those perfectly curated social media feeds.
Oh, yeah.
That project this image of effortless wealth and happiness.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in that, Start comparing yourself, feeling like you're falling short.
Yeah, and that can impact our self-belief.
And then you start making bad decisions.
Absolutely.
So Gage even goes after the food industry, too.
Oh, yeah, he does.
And this is really interesting. He's talking about the deliberate engineering of food to be addictive, which contributes to, poor health and low energy.
Yeah.
He calls it the junk food junkies phenomenon.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure.
And, he makes some pretty interesting arguments about how certain foods are engineered to hijack our brains.
Yeah.
To crave more of them.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the part where his argument really hit home for me, because I've always struggled with sugar cravings, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like many people. And his explanation about how certain foods can like hijack our brain chemistry and create these cravings, it was a real eye-opener for me.
It just highlights how these external factors, they can really impact our physical and mental well-being without us even realizing it.
Yeah, without us even knowing.
Yeah.
And that, I think, leads perfectly into his concept of the victimhood cycle. And I think this is one of his most powerful, but also, I have to admit, kind of unsettling ideas.
Yeah, it can be a little scary to confront that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious. So what's your take on that whole victimhood cycle thing?
Well, he's basically describing this cycle as this self-perpetuating loop where, negative beliefs lead to decisions, and then those decisions create results that just confirm those original beliefs.
Yeah. So we're essentially creating evidence to support the negative stories we tell ourselves, and then we get trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's self-sabotage.
And he uses a really powerful example from his own life,
Oh, yeah.
to illustrate this.
Right. He talks about his own history of failed relationships and businesses.
I remember that part.
And he admits that he even created this dramatic hero's journey narrative,
Right.
just to mask his own feelings of unworthiness.
Yeah, it's a raw and honest admission. It really shows you how deep these patterns can run.
I mean, it takes a lot of self-awareness to even admit that. Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, how do we break free from that cycle? I mean, where do we even begin?
Well, he's a big believer in personal responsibility
Yeah.
and, the power of mindset.
Okay. Right.
He argues that we need to cultivate what he calls a prosperity mindset,
Right.
which is about more than just money.
Okay.
It's about aligning your beliefs and expectations with abundance in all areas of life.
Okay, so it's like shifting our perspective, going from scarcity to possibility.
Exactly. You got it.
Got it.
And that's where congruency comes into play.
Okay.
Gage really emphasizes this. It's about living in alignment with a personal philosophy that's rooted in, clearly defined values and principles.
So it's not just about setting goals, but it's about making sure those goals, they resonate with our core beliefs.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
So figure out what really matters to you. What do you stand for?
Yeah, and ensure that our actions match our values. It's walking the walk.
You got it. So, for example, if you really value financial freedom, but you're constantly overspending, right?
Whoa.
Or you're making these impulsive purchases, that's a sign of incongruency.
Right.
What you're doing doesn't match what you want.
Right. Your actions aren't supporting your goals. Yeah.
It's a form of self-sabotage, really.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So it's about being honest with ourselves and identifying those areas where we might be, getting in our own way.
Exactly. And once you define your values, the next step is to embrace personal responsibility.
Yeah, which can be tough.
Which can be tough. But this is where he really pushes us to let go of that victim mentality.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to blame our circumstances or other people for our struggles, but he wants us to own our choices and, and the consequences that come with them.
Right. The good and the bad.
Both good and bad. Exactly. It's about becoming empowered to create change instead of feeling like we're stuck or helpless.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that really ties back to the concept of congruency.
Okay.
Because when you take responsibility for your actions, you're much more likely to make choices that are in line with your values and goals.
Right. It's recognizing we have way more control than we realize.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So what's next? Where do we go from here?
Okay, well, next you've got to create a vision and take action.
Okay.
And this is where you start to put things into practice,
Okay. So it's not enough to just think positive thoughts. We actually have to translate those thoughts into concrete steps.
Exactly. So you define what you want, right?
Yeah.
Your desired outcome. And then break it down into smaller steps. What can you do today, this week, this month, to actually move closer to what you want?
Right. It's all about consistency and momentum.
Exactly. It's a journey.
Yeah. Right.
Small steps add up over time.
Definitely. And just to be clear for our listeners, Gage isn't advocating for becoming a ruthless tycoon or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
It's not about that.
It's about understanding the power of your own mind, and your choices to create a good life, a life of abundance, but on your terms.
Right. That's key, I think. It's about empowerment and making sure your actions are matching your values.
Exactly. And speaking of empowerment, one of the most controversial ideas that he brings up is this whole idea of being selfish.
Yes. That caught my attention too.
Yeah.
Because it seems so counterintuitive.
Right.
But like we talked about earlier, he's not saying to disregard other people.
No.
There's nuance to it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what's he getting at there?
Well, he's saying that you need to prioritize your own happiness and your purpose. That has to be the foundation of a truly prosperous life.
Yeah.
It's not about ignoring your responsibilities or being self-absorbed.
Okay. Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you can't give what you don't have,
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself first so you can show up fully in the world,
Right. It's a whole you can't pour from an empty cup idea.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not about choosing between caring for yourself or caring for others.
Right.
It's understanding that they're connected.
Exactly. When you take care of yourself, you can actually be better for the people around you.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I know he also delves into the concept of universal laws, which we kind of touched on. And this can be kind of a mind-bending topic for some people. How does he approach this in a way that's practical, something that we can apply in our own lives?
Well, he presents these laws as kind of governing principles that influence the flow of prosperity in our lives.
Okay.
Like we talked about earlier, the law of vacuum and the law of circulation.
Right. Those were about getting rid of the stuff that's no longer serving us and being generous and circulating that wealth and energy.
You got it. And then he talks about the law of attraction,
Oh, yeah.
which I think a lot of people are familiar with. That's about aligning your thoughts and actions with your desired outcomes.
Right. I mean, it's all about the power of visualization.
Yeah.
It's about creating a clear picture of what you want to achieve and then focusing all of your energy towards attracting it.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And then lastly, there's that law of ideas, which is about harnessing the power of those ideas to create prosperity.
That's a big one, yeah.
Yeah. That one's a little more out there,
But-
but I think it ties into like the power of imagination and creativity.
Exactly. He believes that ideas have this inherent power to them.
Okay.
And you can tap into that power by cultivating your imagination,
Right.
thinking big.
So it's not just about being realistic, but it's also about thinking about what's possible,
Exactly. It's about seeing what you could potentially achieve, even if it seems impossible right now.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what he said about viruses.
Yeah.
We have to break free from those limitations.
Yeah. Love that. So it's about empowering ourselves to dream big and then taking action,
Exactly.
making those dreams a reality. And that brings us back to action.
Right.
It's not enough to understand this stuff.
Right.
We actually have to put it into practice.
You got it. It's all about application.
Yeah. So how does he suggest we do that?
Well, he's got all kinds of practical advice,
Okay.
from identifying limiting beliefs to, making vision boards,
Right.
setting clear goals,
Yeah.
breaking things down into small steps,
And it's important to remember that, this is a journey. It's not like a
Oh,
destination.
absolutely.
It's ongoing,
Yeah.
There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be challenges.
Of course.
Yeah.
Everyone has those, right?
Yeah. But I think, by embracing his principles like personal responsibility, congruency, and taking action, we can deal with those challenges and ultimately create a life that we want, a life that reflects what we truly value.
And what we really want deep down.
Right. And that's a powerful message for our listeners. It's all
Absolutely.
about recognizing that we have way more power than we think.
Way more. Yeah.
We can create our own destinies.
We have a choice.
And that brings us to, I think, a really crucial question for our listeners to think about.
Yeah.
What does success actually mean to you?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
What does it really mean? Because a lot of times we're chasing this definition of success that was given to us by society or even our own subconscious programming like we were talking about.
Yeah.
But what if true success is something completely different?
What if it's personal?
What if it's personal? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about defining it on your own terms.
You got it.
And that ties back into congruency, right?
Sure.
If you're living by your values and in line with your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
then you're already successful. You don't need the validation from outside sources.
That's a powerful way to look at it.
Yeah. And I think that's a powerful message, It's about finding that sense of fulfillment, that meaning on
Yeah.
your own terms instead of chasing after some, external definition of success,
It's about the journey.
right?
Yeah.
And that inner fulfillment,
Yeah.
that's what leads to real prosperity.
Yeah. I think so too.
So I think as we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear, what are your thoughts? What do you think are the biggest takeaways from Gage's work so far?
Yeah. For me, the biggest thing is this emphasis on personal responsibility
Yeah.
and the power of mindset.
Yeah.
He reminds us that we're not just victims of our circumstances.
Right.
We're active creators.
We have agency.
We have a say in what happens.
We have a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. It's about recognizing the power we have to choose our thoughts, beliefs, actions.
You have the power.
And ultimately, we have the power to change the course of our own lives.
Yeah. And he gives us the tools.
He does. He does. And I think he gives us a lot to think about. So for our listeners, take some time to reflect on these ideas and, really see what resonates with you.
Yeah, because everyone is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
What works for one person might not work for someone else.
Absolutely. It's about finding what fits your values and your dreams.
Exactly. So take what works for you and leave the rest behind.
Mm.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. And maybe, most importantly, approach all of this with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to, explore new possibilities.
Right.
Yeah, because ultimately this is a personal journey and it can be really rewarding.
It can be. I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, all right, so that's it for this part of our deep dive.
That was great.
But we'll be back soon to keep exploring Gage's ideas and figure out how to apply them to our own lives.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, well, we'll see you then.
So yeah.
Okay, so we've identified this dumb, sick, and broke trap and, the cycle of negativity that can keep us feeling stuck. But now let's talk about the practical stuff. How do we actually break free? What can we do? What are some of the things that Gage recommends?
Well, one of the first things he says is to, take a look at your programming, like do a mental inventory.
Okay, so it's like really diving deep into the messages that we've internalized about money, about health, about happiness, and figuring out where they came from. Right.
Exactly. Like, did you pick it up in childhood?
Uh-huh.
Or is it societal expectations?
Right.
The media? Figure out where you got these viruses?
It's like when you notice a negative thought pattern, right, once you see it, then you can start to question it.
Exactly.
And you can choose a more empowering belief.
And then, the next step is to define your values.
Okay.
And your principles. What really matters to you? What do you stand for? Yeah. Because he says that congruency, aligning your actions with your values, that's crucial for lasting prosperity.
Okay, so it's not just about setting goals, but about making sure those goals actually reflect our core beliefs and our purpose.
You got it. Like, for example, if you say you value financial freedom,
right,
but you're always overspending or making these impulsive purchases, that's not congruent.
Right.
You're not really supporting what you say you want.
Right. Actions speak louder than words, right?
Exactly. It's a form of self-sabotage.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So it's about being really honest with ourselves and figuring out where we might be self-sabotaging.
And then once you define your values, the next step is to really own it,
Okay.
Embrace personal responsibility.
Yeah, which can be tough.
Which can be tough.
Yeah.
It's hard to let go of the blame game,
Yeah, it's easy to blame our circumstances or other people for our problems, but he's really challenging us to take ownership of our choices and the consequences that come with those choices.
The good and the bad.
Exactly. It's about empowering ourselves, to create change instead of feeling helpless or like a victim.
You have more power than you think.
Yeah. And that ties back to that idea of congruency, right?
Exactly.
Like when you take responsibility for our actions, we're more likely to make choices that are in line with our values, with our goals.
For sure. You're more conscious of it?
Yeah. And it's about recognizing that we have more control over our lives than we often realize. Yeah. Okay, so what's next?
Okay, so next, it's about creating a vision and then taking action.
Okay, so it's not enough to just have positive thoughts,
No, you have to actually do something.
We have to take those thoughts and actually, do something with them.
Put them into action.
Put them into action.
So define what you want, that outcome.
Right.
And then break it down. What can you do today, this week, this month? What are those small steps?
It's all about consistency and momentum. Taking those baby steps, but doing them consistently.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that our listeners understand this isn't about becoming some kind of ruthless tycoon or something like that.
Yeah. It's not about, stepping on other people.
No. It's about you.
It's about personal empowerment.
Yeah. It's about understanding the power of your mind.
Right.
The choices that you make
Uh-huh.
to create a life of abundance, but on your own terms.
Yeah, on your own terms. And I think that's a really important distinction.
Yeah, it has to be authentic.
Yeah. And, one of the things that really stands out in Gage's work is, he has this kind of controversial idea about selfishness.
Yeah, that one raises some eyebrows for sure.
Because on the surface, it sounds kind of bad, right? But like we talked about before, it's not about disregarding other people. It's more nuanced than that.
Right. It's not that simple.
So what's he getting at there?
He's saying that you need to prioritize yourself, your happiness and your purpose.
Okay.
That's got to be the foundation.
Yeah.
It's not about ignoring your responsibilities to other people.
Right.
It's more like you can't give what you don't have.
Right.
So you have to take care of yourself first.
Yeah. Fill your own cup before you can fill others.
Exactly.
So it's not about choosing between self-care and caring for others.
Right.
It's about recognizing they're actually connected,
Absolutely. When you take care of yourself, you're actually better equipped to care for other people too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I know he also digs into the concept of universal laws, which can be kind of a, mind-bending topic, right?
Yeah, it can get a little out there.
How does he make that concept practical?
Well, he presents these laws as kind of guidelines, They influence the flow of prosperity in our lives.
Okay.
Like we talked about, there's the law of vacuum, the law of circulation,
Right.
letting go of the things that aren't serving us, and being generous with our energy and wealth.
Right. Right.
And then there's the law of attraction, which a lot of people have heard of.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's about, aligning your thoughts and your actions with what you want to achieve.
Right. So it's about visualization. It's
Yeah.
about creating that clear picture in your mind of what you want and then focusing your energy towards getting it.
Exactly. And then lastly, there's the law of ideas. And that one's about, harnessing the power of ideas to create prosperity.
Okay, so that's the one about imagination and creativity.
Exactly. He thinks ideas are really powerful.
Okay.
And you can tap into that by using your imagination, thinking big.
So it's not just about being realistic. It's about, really pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Exactly. It's about seeing the potential, even if it seems impossible right now.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the viruses,
Yeah.
breaking free from those limitations.
I love that. So it's about like empowering ourselves to think bigger, to dream bigger, and then taking action to actually make those dreams a reality.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that brings us back to action, right? It's not enough to just understand this stuff. We've got to actually do something.
Absolutely. You got to apply it.
Yeah. So what does he suggest?
He's got a lot of practical advice.
Yeah.
Everything from figuring out what your limiting beliefs are,
Right.
to making a vision board, to setting clear goals,
Okay.
and breaking things down into small, manageable steps.
And it's important to remember, this isn't a destination, it's a journey.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's ongoing. You're going to have setbacks, you're going to have challenges.
Everybody does.
But if you can, embrace these principles like personal responsibility and congruency and really commit to taking action,
Yeah.
then you can work through those challenges and create the life you want.
A life that really reflects your values and your dreams.
Right. Exactly. And that's a powerful message for our listeners.
It is. It's really about empowerment.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we have way more power than we realize.
We have the power to change our lives.
We have a choice.
And that brings us to a question I think is really important for our listeners to think about. What does success actually mean to you?
Yeah. What does it really mean?
Because a lot of times we're chasing this definition of success that was given to us, Maybe it was given to us by society, maybe it's from our families, maybe it's even our own subconscious programming.
Right.
But what if real success is something completely different?
What if it's personal?
What if it's personal?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about defining success on your own terms.
You got it.
And that ties back into that whole congruency thing, right?
Oh, sure.
If you're living by your values, if you're aligned with your purpose, you're already successful.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what other people think.
You don't need external validation.
Yeah. And that's a powerful message.
It is.
It's about finding that feeling of fulfillment and meaning, but finding it on your own terms, not chasing after some external definition of success that somebody else gave you.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. And that inner fulfillment, that leads to true prosperity. So as we're getting ready to wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are some of the biggest takeaways from Gage's work for you?
Well, for me, I think the biggest thing is this emphasis on personal responsibility and the power of our mindset. He really reminds us that we're not just victims of circumstance.
Yeah.
We're not passive.
Right.
We're active creators.
We have agency.
We have the power to shape our lives.
We have the power to choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is huge.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's about understanding that we have this power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, and ultimately to shape the course of our lives.
And he gives us the tools to do that.
He does. He really does. And he gives us a lot to think about. So
Sure.
for our listeners, take some time with this, really think about these ideas, see what resonates with you.
Yeah, because what works for one person might not work for everyone.
Absolutely.
So take what works, leave the rest. There's no right or wrong answer here.
There's no one size fits all.
Yeah. And most importantly, I think, approach all of this with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
And a willingness to explore new possibilities.
Because ultimately, this is a personal journey,
It is. It's your journey.
And it's a journey that can be really rewarding.
For sure.
Okay, well, that's it for this part of our deep dive.
This is great.
We'll be back soon to continue exploring Gage's ideas and how to put them into practice.
Can't wait.
Okay, we'll see you then.
See you later.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with Gage's philosophy, from the dumb, sick, and broke trap to the power of mindset and, all that. But I'm curious, does he actually give us any, concrete strategies? like
Yeah.
how to actually create wealth.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Okay.
He actually outlines 3 specific business models that he thinks are really good for building wealth.
Okay, perfect. So this is where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly.
We've talked about the mental and emotional side of things,
Right.
but how do we actually make it happen in the real world?
You got it. And the first one he talks about is real estate.
Ah, the classic. So what's his take on real estate?
Well, he recognizes the power of leverage in real estate.
Okay.
You can use borrowed money, right,
Right.
to buy assets that will go up in value over time. So you can really multiply your returns.
So it's about using debt strategically, not just to buy stuff, but to actually build wealth.
You got it.
Hmm.
But he also says you need to be smart about it.
Okay.
You need to really understand the market,
Mm-hmm.
do your research, make informed decisions.
Right. It's not just about buying any property. It's about finding the right opportunity.
Exactly. Don't over leverage yourself,
Yeah. Right.
and make sure you have a financial cushion just in case things don't go as planned.
Right. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, real estate can be really powerful, but you got to be smart about it.
Got it. Okay, so what's the next business model he talks about?
The second one he talks about is becoming an information entrepreneur.
Okay, now that's interesting. What does that even mean?
It basically means packaging your knowledge and skills or experiences into products or services
Okay.
that other people will pay for.
So it's kind of like becoming a consultant, a
Okay.
coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And this model's gotten super popular because of the internet.
Right. You can reach a global audience.
Exactly. You can build a whole platform.
Yeah.
And a big advantage of this is passive income.
Oh, yeah, that's the dream, making money while you sleep. Right.
Exactly. Things like ebooks, online courses,
Yeah.
memberships. You can make money even when you're not working.
But I imagine it takes a lot of work to get to that point.
It does. Like any business, it takes effort and strategy.
Right.
And you really got to understand who your audience is.
Okay, so it's not just about having a good idea.
No.
It's about knowing how to market it.
You got it. And now for his favorite model,
Okay.
network marketing.
Okay, the big one, the MLM. I know this is a controversial one, so I'm curious. What's Gage's take on this?
He actually thinks network marketing is a great way to build wealth, especially for people who maybe don't have access to traditional business opportunities. He sees it as a way to kind of level the playing field.
Okay, so it's about giving everyone a chance, no matter what their background is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's low barrier to entry, and you can make a lot of money.
Right. Which is appealing, especially if you don't have a lot of money to start with.
And he really likes that network marketing has a supportive community.
Okay. So you're not in it alone.
Exactly. You've got a whole team
Okay.
who's working towards the same goals,
Yeah.
and they're there to support you.
I like that. So it's more about collaboration, not cutthroat competition.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm sure he addresses the negative stuff too, right? Network marketing does have a bad reputation.
Oh, yeah, he knows.
Yeah.
There are a lot of pyramid schemes out there
Yeah.
and scams.
Right.
So he says you have to do your research.
So it's about really vetting the company, making sure it's legit.
You got it. Make sure the compensation plan makes sense. And it aligns with your values.
So it's about doing it ethically.
Exactly. And choose products or services that you really believe in.
Right. Things you would recommend even if you weren't making money from it.
Exactly. So, yeah, network marketing can be great, but you got to be careful.
Makes sense. Okay, so those are the 3 models: real estate, information products, and network marketing. Each one has pros and cons. And it's up to each person to decide what's right for them, what fits their skills and interests.
And remember what we were saying earlier about prosperity being more than just money.
Right. It's about purpose and meaning, too.
Exactly.
So it's about finding what truly resonates with you and what feels like the right path for you.
And it all comes back to mindset, believing you can achieve it.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to create the life we want.
You got it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Randy Gage and his book, Why You're Dumb, Sick, and Broke, I really encourage our listeners to keep thinking about these ideas. Maybe check out some of the resources he mentions.
Yeah. Try things out, experiment.
And most importantly, believe in yourself.
You got the power.
You have the power to create a life of abundance, a life of prosperity.
It's all up to you.
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, this was fun.
I hope our listeners got a lot out of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's great to share these ideas.
Yeah, and remember, the journey to prosperity, it's a personal one, and the most important thing is to just start.
Just take that first step.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, remember to live life out loud and in vibrant color.